Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today we're going to continue our segment on looking at the Chaos Space Marine Codex. Today I'm going to be looking at Rubric Marines. Now it's kind of strange to discuss these outside Thousand Sun sort of detachments with the new sort of Chaos Codexes coming out, i.e. Thousand Sun and Death Guard. I find that the cult units are a bit strange to include in sort of Chaos Space Marines forces. You know, it seems odd. It's like almost bringing like Wilfen and Death Company and all that into Space Marine sort of generic forces now that we have our sort of codexes to play with, and future ones hopefully. So it's kind of odd, but I do find the sort of dedicated units still have a place, especially the two that don't have codexes, i.e. Khorne Berzerkers and Noise Marines. They actually do quite well working within the sort of Chaos Space Marine forces. But we're not talking about them today. Today we're talking about Rubric Marines. So how this works is that I'm going to look at the stat line, equipment and special abilities of the unit in the codex as we see. Then I am going to speak about some of the loadouts and roles that I think that they best suit, along with Legion traits, because you don't need to have Thousand Sun Legion trait when you use them in the Chaos Space Marine Codex. You've got some choices. Psychic abilities that can help them, and stratagems. So yeah, that's what we're going to look at today. Let's begin by looking at the Rubric Marines stat line. So standard Rubric Marine has a movement of 5 with its aspiring sorcerer being 6. Bit odd, but fair enough. They are automaton in some way that they don't have, you know, they're all dust now. So yeah, a bit slower. I can accept that lore wise. It's a bit of a disadvantage, but you know, losing that 1 inch is not the worst. Weapon skill and bliss skill 3+, so although they may be dust, they've not lost obviously their training as Marines. In some way they are still as accurate, though it might be just the sorcerer controlling them as well. Strength and toughness 4+, well 4s, yep, kind of what you'd expect for Marines, especially in their power armour. Wounds 1, again what you'd expect for standard infantry. Attacks 1 with the Rubric Marines and 2 for the aspiring sorcerer. These guys don't do combat, so that's kind of okay. Leadership 7 and 8 for the aspiring sorcerer. I'd almost hope that the rubrics would have been slightly higher, you know, considering how they don't really run. But maybe you know they're not really Marines as such, you know. But yeah, you know, maybe it would be nice if there was a rule where if the champion died, then the rubrics had a lower leadership. But it's a bit of a strange one, that one. Either way, it is kind of a standard leadership. I know Khorne Berzerkers are the same, and I think most other units are as well, unless they are chosen, which are higher. But no, they are leadership 7 and leadership 8 for the leader, and 3+ standard power armor save. Now each Marine does come with an Infernal Bolt Gun, which in itself is a really cool piece of equipment, and the aspiring sorcerer is armed with Force Stave and an Infernal Bolt Pistol. Now you have a plethora of choices of upgrades that you can go for. We have all the force weapon sort of upgrades for the aspiring sorcerer. So you've got the axe, stave and sword, which is essentially sort of power weapons, but it does D3 damage, which is kind of cool. In terms of, I'll quickly speak about the weapons in here. So you have the Infernal Bolt Pistol and the Infernal Bolt Gun. Bolt Pistol is range 12, Bolt Gun is 24. Pistol's pistol 1, Bolt Gun's rapid fire 1. So you can see the advantage of the bolt gun there, that you are aiming for your rapid fire range. Strength 4, kind of standard for a bolt gun, but the most important is -2 AP. I can't stress that I actually love -1 AP quite a lot. I think on, you know, things that put up a lot of shot is great. -2 AP is very dangerous. 1 damage, what do you expect from a bolt gun? You also have the choice of the Warp Flame pistol and Warp Flamer. Warp Flame pistol is pistol D6 with 6-inch range, and the Warp Flamer is 8-inch range, assault D6. The pistol is strength 3, which is a bit weaker, you know, I'd expect it to be 4. The Flamer itself is strength 4, so that's nicer, but they're both -2 AP. D6 damage, D6 hits that automatically hit the target. 1 damage piece. I mean, at the end of the day, every guy can replace his Infernal Bolt Gun with a Warp Flamer, and that can make a very dangerous unit. It does mean their function is kind of similar, but it kind of encourages you to be a bit more aggressive with them. but certainly the Infernal Bolt Gun and the Warp Flamer are incredibly dangerous pieces of war gear, you know, when they're used right. I can't stress that more than anything. I've been on the receiving end of them far too often. One of the rubrics may replace their Infernal Bolt Gun with a Soul Reaper cannon. If it's a 20 models, a second one can do so as well. Soul Reaper cannon is 24 inches, heavy 4. You're not going to worry about that heavy 4 though. Strength 5, so again, going after troops in that one. Minus 3 AP for like a standard Marine, that's pretty awesome. And 1 damage, so it works quite well with the Infernal Bolt Gun. It has the same range, 24 inches, putting out shots, higher strength, higher AP, same damage, quite nice. And finally, you can take the Icon of Flame. I can't work out why, I never can. You might get some mortal wounds in there, but not the most likely. Never been a fan of it. Love to hear your thoughts on that one. In terms of abilities for the Rubric Marines, you have Death to the False Emperor. Again, I will not go into that in detail, but basically any 6s when in the combat phase, when you're hitting Imperium units, any 6s plus to hit, you get an extra attack. These guys don't do combat so well, so you won't probably see them taking full advantage of that. Favoured by Zinch, all models in this unit have a 5-up invul. That's pretty awesome. 5-up invul is always handy to have, helps your survivability, and possibly a fantastic rule that gets me every time that Rubric's got this. All is dust. Add 1 to saving throws for Rubric Marines if the attack has damage characteristic of 1. In addition, the -1 modifier to hit rolls for moving and shooting with heavy weapons does not apply with Rubrics. So that's why you're not worried about Soul Reaper Cannon. Get a -1, because if you move, you're still going to be firing at full efficiency. But adding 1 saving throws when the damaged one. Now these guys want to be hit by damage 1 stuff because they've only got 1 wound. You don't want to put 2 damage stuff or 3 damage stuff or D3 damage stuff on these guys, and D3 does mean that even if you roll 1 damage, D3 still means it goes past their 1 damage, and you've literally got to have the characteristic 1 damage for it to apply. You know, D6, D3 don't count. So, you know, you want to deal with these kind of line troops with 1 damage, because that's kind of what I do. But when you do so, their save goes up if you've got no AP to a 2+ save, Terminator save. Oh, that's terrifying for these kind of guys. And even better is that even if you've got 1 damage but loads of AP on it, like say Plasma Gun that isn't supercharging, because if it's supercharged it becomes 2 damage, you're still going to get +1 to your invul save as well, so you're going to be rocking a 4+ invul as well. Generally speaking, these guys have great survivability and lots of options to go with it as well. So yeah, survivability, ignoring the heavy rule, really generally quite good, and some fearsome weapons to go along with it. On top of that, an Inspiring Sorcerer can attempt to manifest 1 psychic power in each of the psychic phase, and attempt to deny 1 psychic power in each of the enemy's psychic phase. He knows Smite psychic power. When Inspiring Sorcerer manifests Smite psychic ability, he inflicts 1 mortal wound instead of D3, or D3 mortal wounds instead of D6 if the result of the psychic test is more than 10, so 11 or 12. I'm not a big fan of doing lots of Smite with these guys. What we should also remember as well, with the new sort of rules that came in, Psychic Focus, I think I'll speak a bit more on that later, but Psychic Focus means that 1,000 Sons of Grey Knights don't get affected, but you add 1 to your Psychic result each time, so you push that sort of, you might end up getting 12 more and more and more with this unit. You've got to be 1,000 Sons of Grey Knights. You know, we've got to have their sort of Legion rule, if you will, to be able to stop it. I think it's Brotherhood of Sorcerers for 1,000 Sons. So if you start doing loads of Smite with Rubric Marines or with other units, you will suffer Psychic Focus on this. So that's kind of important. But, you know, you get some cheap mortal wounds maybe, but there's other stratagems to get much more better abilities. So yeah, that is what the rubrics are in the Codex. Generally quite a terrifying midfield force because of those Infernal Bolt Guns and Warp Flamers. With that, I'm going to talk about the loadouts and how they are sort of suited for one another. So this will be talking about the weapons themselves. So Infernal Bolt Gun versus Warp Flamer. Let's start with Infernal Bolt Gun. Forest Point's an impressive piece of kit. -2 AP will help shred armour pretty impressively. A 10-man squad in rapid fire range will generally shred armoured units pretty well. Add in the survivability of Rubric Marines and they can make, you know, an effective midfield unit that can come across the field, rapid fire your opponent's units. Not bad. Be warned for Horde units, invul saves and other units looking for combat. Horde units do not usually have great armour save to go by, so that -2 AP is not so bad, and they'll take the casualties in order to get to the Rubric Marines and get them in the danger zone of possibly combat. You know, though one thing I would add is that most Horde armies, you will find that they only, in combat, if they do get like 80 attacks, will probably do 1 damage, so you might get your 2+ save, which would be really, really nice. Just watch out for that sneaky Power Claw that might come along with them, because they'll just slap Rubric Marines about. Invul saves, while you're, you know, not a bit more expensive bolter, I mean that's not 0 points for it, it's pretty impressive, but it's just going to more or less be like a regular bolter if your opponent's just rocking invul saves, you know. So, you know, you're looking at things like wraiths, etc. Their invul save is pretty good. You hit them with these Infernal Bolt Guns, it's just like being hit by a regular bolt gun to them. They don't really care. And then you've also got you know, your combat units, things that are looking to try and hunker you down in combat. If you get stuck in combat, these guys will not traditionally do well. So, you know, you want to be aggressive, you know, moving up, getting into midfield to rapid fire, but still, you know, you've got to watch out for those other combat units. You probably want to protect it with something to detract these combat units, to rescue the Rubric Marines if they do get, you know, stuck in, because they won't traditionally win the combat. It might be a bit of a grind because you might have a really good save, but that just means your, you know, sort of impressive sort of AP damaging weapons are not doing what they're supposed to do, because these guys don't fight out of combat, not very well. Warp Flamer, well, this is how you get a very expensive unit, but one when used correctly can tear the heart out of an enemy unit, specifically those around toughness 4. Short range means that you're sure need to get these to your opponents and quickly to get the most of them. As they are still weapons, except for the pistol, you can advance and still fire. The weakness of 5-inch movement, you know, is sort of mitigated by this in a way, being able to advance and still fire. However, you're still probably going to want movement options when you're taking, you know, Warp Flame units. So you probably want transport, stratagems, or warp time to really move you forward. Possibly within a Rhino, move up. Turn 1, advance with the Rhino, smoke to try and protect them. Then turn 2, jump out 3 inches, move 5, advance d6, and flame something to death. You hit automatically, so who cares about that -1 to hit when advancing. This is an extremely expensive unit, so expect it to attract death where possible. I think it clocks in at around 30 points per model, so not cheap for things with 1 wound. You better get the most out of these guys. Mobility is their weakness. You know, some units will generally try and avoid them like the plague, because as soon as they start throwing flames everywhere, units will try and back off if they've got the mobility to do so. So you can play about with your opponent's sort of movement on that side. Horde units will dread these guys as well, because Hordes generally fear flamers like nothing else. So a whole unit of these that may jump out and damage units significantly, and then if force them to be damaged again in Overwatch, can really just see a Horde unit burn up before they really do anything, or force them to take the longer charge. So, you know, they can make a charge out with the sort of flamer range, but it means less likely to get there, or they could risk going through the flamer gauntlet, which I don't advise, because if you stab a full 10-man squad with flamers, it's gonna kill some stuff. Probably it's not fun. But then again, if your opponent doesn't even tie them down, it's just gonna waste those shots. In terms of the Soul Reaper cannon, I feel it's a worthy addition for either configuration. If you wish to arm your rubrics, you know, that way. I mean, you don't need to worry about the -1 to moving and firing, which is great. I think it's probably better to do with the Infernal Bolt Gun configuration, as they can work on a range of similar to Warp Bolters themselves. while it's not as advantageous for Warped Flamers, because you may want to advance to be more aggressive with the Flamers, but then you'll sacrifice the Soul Reaper itself. So maybe leave them behind with the Reaper behind to obtain the Flamers, but it's interesting to hear your views on that as well. I mean, while you're moving forwards and maybe your Flamers aren't in range, your Soul Reaper can do something. But I prefer with these Flamers, you want to go all out and into your opponent's face. As for the unit champion, you have the choice of force weapons. I will always choose the axe for the slightly higher strength and pretty good AP. However, an axe does not seem like a fitting thing for a aspiring sorcerer, you know, in the Rubric Marines. I don't think it really matches so well. Plus, you don't want them in combat, so maybe take the cheaper option of the Force Sword or the Staff to keep it thematic. Works quite as well. Either way, in terms of ranged weapons, I'd usually keep the aspiring sorcerer's weaponry similar to the unit itself. So if you've got Infernal Bolt Guns, take the pistol. If you've got Warp Flamer, take the Warp Flame pistol. Works out quite well. Finally, you have the ability to use one psychic ability. With this, we mentioned the weaker version of Smite already. Be cautious of this because you're not Thousand Suns. You do suffer the effects of psychic focus, and as you've only got one wound, if you do suffer Pearls of the Warp, it's going to be pretty painful. You're going to suffer some mortal wounds and lose some of those precious Marines. But we've got other abilities and things we can get past that. So Legion traits. Now you're going, oh no, I'm Thousand Suns, don't they have a Legion trait? Not when you're in Chaos. So we've got some options and they can be pretty advantageous. So Alpha Legion, hidden in plain sight. Your opponent must subtract 1 from hit rolls that target units with this trait if they're more than 12 inches away. These guys do favour being in rapid fire range quite a lot to get the most out of their shots, or Warp Flamer range, so that's not, you know, you're kind of going to lose that -1. However, the Soul Reaper cannon, where they're sitting back even with the bolters, can still make a threatening unit and make them quite durable. -1 to hit, and then if you're only being hit by 1 damage, +1 save, including on your invul as well, these guys are going to absorb a lot of damage. Just watch out for mortal wounds. I should maybe say that about rubrics, because mortal wounds just get through a lot of their advantages quite easily, and generally that's how I deal with rubrics quite well. If you can get mass mortal wounds, these guys hate them. Iron Warriors, Siege Lords. Enemy units attacked by units with this trait do not gain any bonus to their saving throw in cover. In addition, you get to reroll failed wound rolls for units with this trait when they target a building. So yeah, these guys are ranged specialists, and by ignoring cover, these help their already impressive AP. After all, Flamers no longer ignore cover. Though I feel rubrics working as Iron Warriors Legion is a bit of an odd fit, you know, it seems just a bit strange. I'm sure it may have happened lore-wise at some point, but it just seems odd, you know, Iron Warriors taking on Thousand Suns and using them as a Legion. Bit odd. Black Legion, Black Crusaders. Adds 1 to leadership characteristics and models in this unit with this trait. In addition, if a unit with this trait advances, it treats all its rapid fire weapons as assault weapons until the end of the turn, e.g. rapid fire 2 weapons are treated as assault 2. So I'm really not a fan of this trait at all. I mean, I'm partly just using it because it's kind of the one that fits most outside sort of Thousand Suns, if you will. Black Legion tends to take on, you know, all kinds of marine forces of the Chaos variety. And I partly think, you know, there's a reason why we haven't seen this sort of Legion trait in further codexes down the line after the sort of the initial rush. So you had it in Space Marines, you had it in Chaos Space Marines, you had it in Admech, so, you know, and then it sort of began to peter out. Maybe 1 or 2 other codexes had it, I don't think so. But these initial ones came out and it sort of was, in my view, a bit poorly received. I think for good reasons. The +1 leadership is pretty useful for a survivable unit. It means that, you know, you're going to have less rubrics running away, and has paid off dividends when I've actually played as Tau. I've managed to really do quite well by having that +1 leadership. Made a huge difference in some games I've played, and they have a much better secondary trait with Tau as well, but I'm not here to discuss that. But they have that +1 leadership and a really cool ability as well. The turn and rapid fire into advance, I just found it not that useful and a bit counterintuitive. You know, if I'm going to advance, I want to get in a better position, either to, you know, if I've got a possibility to advance and charge, great, or If I've got an ability to, you know, charge later on in the game, then I will advance. Or I'm going to choose to rapid fire if I've got a chance rather than advance. There might be times where you might get a couple extra shots this way, but generally I just don't really like it. Honestly, not that great, but as I said, thematically works for Rubric Marines, I guess. And there's a stratagem that's quite cool for Black Legion as well. Psychic abilities. So the Psychic phase can be useful for rubrics, but you need to be sort of savvy about it. Dark Hereticus works well for getting up close and personal with your opponent and really doing a bit more damage in the fight phase. But there is ways for the Rubric Marines weapons to also do quite well without being in the combat phase, because they don't want to be. Also, you know, important stratagem, we'll go into that one later, about psychic abilities, which is kind of important. So yeah, Prescience, Warp Charge 7, if manifested, select a Heretic status unit within 18 inches of the Psyker. You can add 1 to hit rolls made for this unit until the start of the next Psychic phase. So we do not care about this being used for the combat abilities. I think we said that with Berserkers last week, where we said, oh, they don't care about the shooting phase. No, rubrics all care about this being +1 to hit in the shooting phase. Mainly with the Infernal Bolters, because the Warp Flamers won't care about this at all. So yeah, a bit of pressure when the warp from the rapid fire can bring some great advantages. Ultimately though, it's dependent on your target and range and time. Perhaps paired up with veterans stratagem as well, this can be pretty brutal. Big unit, rapid firing straight into your opponent, veterans activating, hitting on 2s, it's gonna hurt. So yeah, it can work out quite nice. Warp time, Warp Charge 6, pick a Heretic stash unit within 3 inches of the Psyker. This unit can immediately move as if it was the movement phase. The unit can only benefit from this once per Psychic phase. So usually warp time in the Codex is reserved for combat units wanting to get in and mess about with everyone's good time in the combat phase. Well, this time warp time is about burning everything to a crisp. Move, advance, then warp time, move, advance and torch. Burn everything to a crisp, if it's in range. D6 per model automatic hits with Warp Flamer, -2 AP, adds on veteran stratagem, and you're making a fairly dangerous unit that needs to be dealt with, otherwise they're going to cause all kinds of carnage. You know, and essentially, you know, no one wants to then get overwatched by these guys as well, so it puts a lot of pressure your opponent must deal with. This may be a suicide squad because, you know, hopefully cause a bit of damage along the way, and if your opponent is going to charge, then they're going to suffer overwatch, or they're going to have to commit a few charges to guarantee to catch them in combat and shut them down, because these guys will cause problems if left alone. So yeah, warp time is about getting into that position and really making the most out of those flamers. I suppose you could say the same about the bolters, but the flamers can use warp time to get in there. He might come out of a vehicle as well when you do that. Death X, Warp Charge 8. If manifested, select a visible enemy unit within 12 inches of the Psyker. Until the start of the next Psychic phase, that unit cannot take invuln saves. So yeah, this ain't an augment spell as such, but it does work well with rubrics. The impressive shooting AP for Bolter is very important for its cost. So if you're choosing units like Wraiths or Thundershield Terminators, it's a waste with their sort of good -AP if their invuln save is going to be generally better. So yeah, remove that sort of invuln save, rapid fire some -2 AP, or warp plane them, and you can watch the unit take a lot more damage. Death X is a fantastic ability to sort of point at a unit and go, that one needs to go. Make sure you have a unit nearby to take full advantage of it. Lastly, Weaver of Fates. Warp Charge 6, Mark of Tzeentch only. Select a visible Tzeentch Heretic stash unit within 18 inches of the Psyker. Till the start of the next Psychic phase, you can add 1 to any invuln saves taken for this unit. Models do not have invuln saves gain a 5+ invuln save, and also due to the FAQ, can only go to a 3+ maximum. I think the FAQ made that absolutely clear. So yeah, these guys can easily get this, get to their 3+ invuln save, making Plasma a lot less threatening. Unless it's supercharged, then I think you're back down to your 4. But 4+ invuln still not to be sniffed at, and it does mean that your opponent has a chance at frying themselves. Overall, I think we like this in characters more. characters called Magnus. But a large 20-man squad with Warp Flamers is going to cost you a lot of points, so putting this spell on them will make them equally that more survivable and generally cause your opponent a lot of heartache, you know, so I think it is quite worth considering. Stratagem recommendations, so yeah, we'll start with the obvious one. Veterans of the Long War. Cost 1 command point. Use this stratagem when a Heretic Astartes infantry or biker unit is selected to attack in the shooting or fight phase, excluding renegade chapters. I think I avoided renegade chapters in this one because I don't think we're so bored by that, because we don't want to charge. You can add 1 to all wound rolls made for the unit until the end of the phase. Hands down a waste of time in the fight phase, leave it to those Berserkers. This is all about the Infernal Bolters and Warp Flamers. Minus 2 AP is awesome, and what better way to make something with a medium amount of strength become that much deadlier. If you have Way of Dice behind you, then yeah, Vets this may be a good unit to go with, especially with the Warp Flamers. If you want to really sort of gut the life out of a unit, you know, or at least significantly damage it. Certainly in a big unit this can be devastating, but really interesting to see how it works. Though sadly, you know, you have to announce it before you work out how many random shots you get with the Flamers. I'm 9% sure you've got to do right, that goes first, and then roll the dice for the amount of attacks, because you've got to choose your weapon before you actually roll the dice. So one of these days, you know, when we do these unbelievable amount of flames, you know, I'm going to go veterans, you know, add that to it, and then I'm going to roll 10 ones, you know, you don't want that. Statistically unlikely to roll 10 ones. I've not seen it, but I do play a few games, so not likely to happen, but it'll be one of those games you activate veterans thinking you're going to gut an opponent, and then you get an unbelievable low amount of automatic hits, which is just devastating. Still though, veterans can be awesome with this. Chaos Familiar, 1 command point. Use the stratagem at the end of your psychic phase. Sorry, at the start of your psychic phase. Select a friendly Heretic Astartes Psyker. This model can replace any of its psychic powers with the power of your choice from the Dark Hereticus discipline. Goodbye, you know, we can smite, we hardly knew thee. Get rid of that disadvantage of smite, which may result in your demise, as talked about, because you don't have psychic focus, and take an ornament that will see you do better, you know, I'll give you, you can go better mobility, warp time, accuracy, prescience, weaken your opponent death X. Generally you can take one of the psychic abilities, so get rid of smite, and bring in a Dark Hereticus ability, which allows these guys to get a bit more options. I think for a single command point, if you've got a big committed unit of rubrics, this isn't a bad option. You know, if they don't have any other psychers, sorcerers nearby to support them, then yeah, you know, why not buff themselves for 1 command point and see, you know, and pick a better power. So I definitely think that is one to definitely consider. Forward operations, Alpha Legion only, 1 command point. Look, I talk about this nearly every time because it's awesome. As usual, too long to go on about. At the end of the day, this puts your rapid fire weapons right in rapid fire range straight off the bat, and it puts your flamers within walking distance of flaming turn 1, which is kind of awesome. On a 20-man squad with warp flamers in your opponent's face is scary. If they're smart, I would suggest trying to throw as many, you know, 9-inch charges as they can to avoid those flames, because you will not survive that gauntlet at all. If it's 20-man squads, you know, the Overwatch will just be too painful. So, you know, you've got to be dealing with as much firepower on that squad as possible. You know, 20-man warp flamer that starts the game 9 inches away. If you get first turn, you're going to cause untold havoc. And then, even then, your opponent's going to have to commit a lot to remove that unit. It's going to be a very expensive unit, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I might try that one day. Alpha Legion Rubric Marines with warp flamers. Yeah, I might try that one day, just see, and pray I get first turn. If I get first turn, it's going to be fun. Anyway, let the galaxy burn. Black Legion stratagem, 1 command point. Use the stratagem when a Black Legion infantry or biker unit is selected to attack in the shooting or fight phase. You can reroll hit rolls of 1 for that unit for the rest of the phase. If the unit is Chaos Space Marine Squad, you can reroll all failed hit rolls for it instead. Super awesome stratagem, 1 command point, you get to reroll 1s. Yep, sure, with rapid fire, this is going to be awesome. Warp Flamer, don't really care. sadly you've got to be Black Legion, and I'm just not sold on the Black Legion trait at all. I'm just not a fan of it. Overall, best reason to take the best reason to take Black Legion, I feel, other than a few other abilities they can get, is this stratagem. It is just so useful, and it's such a shame that it's not a generic one, because you'd see it so much in Chaos Space Marine games if that was the case. Or choose Abaddon, because he allows a lot of advantages in a Black Legion force as well. He's pretty good, you know, to take as well. So yeah, good stratagem in a pinch for Infernal Bolters, not so much for Warp Flamers. So yeah, that is my sort of look on Rubric Marines within Chaos Space Marine Force. I actually quite like them. I think they do bring a sort of midfield, sort of dangerous AP weapon sort of unit. They do need a bit of protection, because if they get caught in combat and mortal wounds are their natural enemy, they can be a pain, but they've got great survivability and great damage potential on them as well. They can rack up a lot of points really, really quick, but they can lay down a lot of damage if positioned right. Love to hear your thoughts on taking these sort of dedicated god units, you know, within Chaos Space Marine forces. I think, you know, I might say this now a couple of times in the next couple of ones. I think now that we're beginning to see these sort of codexes come out, that's now 50% of them, with, you know, Death Guard and Thousand Sun. You know, if we see any other future ones in the future, it's going to be really odd seeing these units in Chaos Space Marine forces, but at the moment they still offer quite a wee bit. So it's kind of nice to still have that option. So yeah, thanks again for watching. Please comment, share, like and subscribe. Love to hear your thoughts on Rubric Marines. I'm sure when we finally get to Thousand Suns, we'll hear a slightly different version of them as well. But I'd love to hear your views when you're using them as Chaos Space Marines. So not Thousand Suns, Contract Chaos Space Marines. Yeah. So yeah, check us out on social media. We've got a bunch of projects also coming as well. Hopefully new forces and things we're working on, which will always be good. So yeah, thanks again, and we will see you on another Tabletop Assault Battle Report.